This podcast has been brought to you by Seeker's Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Help us spread the light of prophetic guidance to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Make a small donation at seekersguidance.org/donate. For as little as $10 a month, you can help people find life-changing guidance.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وعملا وقربا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا أرحم الراحمين ويا أكرم الأكرمين ويا ذا الجلال والإكرام. Okay, so Bismillah. So we were looking at the believer who was hiding his iman, this believer who was in the elite group of people around Fir'awn, probably had a great deal of power in some aspect of ruling Egypt, and you know it's clear that it's clear that his attempts to guide the people around him, they were optimistic. Right? You know, these people were really entrenched in their worldly power, in their worldly status, and they even had this belief. You know, it was like I said, their social identity and their religious identity, that they are believers in Fir'aun, that they follow him. You know, so it takes a great deal of courage for someone to say, you know what, I am going to accept the truth, and I will accept the truth, and I won't stay on this way of falsehood, even though there are many ways and there are many reasons for me to do so. حفت الجنة بالمكاره وحفت النار بالشهوات وحفت الجنة بالمكاره. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the hellfire is surrounded by desires, things that people find desirable. Obviously metaphorically, that, you know, it's these things that lead a person to fall in, even though they're not meant to be, you know, not good for you. And paradise is surrounded by things that people dislike, which sometimes is just admitting the truth, admitting that, you know, this belief that you've had for this time has been wrong, right? These sorts of things. So that's, you know, what he had to do, and it was a bit of a challenge, you know, but we saw yesterday he's openly inviting them, and now what we see is that Fir'aun's elite, they actually rejected his guidance, and they're trying to do the opposite. It's like, you know, they think, you know, he's lost his way, let's bring him back. So they're trying to misguide him, take him away from the truth that is found. So let's see what happens here. So it says, Ya qawmi, إنما هذه الحياة الدنيا متاع وإن الآخرة هي دار القرار. So he says, oh my people, this worldly life is only a fleeting enjoyment, whereas the akhirah is truly the home of settlement. من عمل سيئة فلا يجزى إلا مثلها ومن. Let's look at it bit by bit. He says, يا قوم إنما هذه الحياة الدنيا متاع وإن الدار الآخرة هي دار القرار وإن الآخرة هي دار القرار. He says, oh my people, you can tell this is a teaching he's imbibed from Sayyidina Musa. Maybe he was seeing Sayyidina Musa, speaking to him, benefiting from him, but it's a teaching he's gained, it's a perspective he's gained. And so he says, oh my dear people, that care and concern is still there. Clearly, obviously, this hayat dunya, and the word hayat is used in describing this life, whereas the akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls it al-hayawan, the truly huge, amazing, thriving, you know, vibrant life, compared to the mere life, right, you could say. And so the life of a dunya, so this lifetime, as I said, you know, in the Quran is referred to as a dunya, which can mean the lowest place or the closest place, and they both have a valid, you know, perspective, you know. that they can be understood from. But I think the closest place also has, when juxtaposed with the akhirah, that this is closer and that is after. This is closer to you, so it's first, and that is after. And because of its incredible closeness, it veils you from what comes after. I mean, like if you stood, if you've got a beautiful view of some natural scenery, and then someone comes up, parks a big juggernaut truck in front of you, it's going to veil most or all of it, right? You can't see, even though the akhirah is there, just as real as, in fact, more so, right, than this truck in front of you. So it's like that. So it says, "Innama hadhihi al-hayatu dunya mata'." It's just a mata', and the mata' in the Arabic language is basically it's a temporary ceasing, temporary pleasure, and it can be a great pleasure, great enjoyment, and something where there's a lot of good, and you could have a lot of benefit in it, and it can last even a long time as well. It doesn't necessarily mean it's um, only going to last a few days. Some people live here. The people of Sayyidina Nuh lived 1,000 years, right, or thereabouts. In our time, in our lifetime, people live a century, right? It does happen, but no matter how long it is, it's a mata, it's temporary, right? So the whole point is, like, if you're crossing a bridge, you don't just stop halfway and think, you know what, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to settle here, we'll build a house here, I'll raise my children over there, I'll plant some cabbages over there. You don't do that, right? Because the point of the bridge is to cross to get to the other side. So this is a perspective. So it doesn't mean that um, you just neglect your worldly responsibilities and duties. No, fulfilling your duties and worldly responsibilities and worship and taking after your dependents and your community and these things, doing those things is crossing the bridge, right? And the moments pass, but if you can just be doing something that has no effect on your akhirah, right? That's not crossing the bridge properly. That's building on the bridge, right? So it says, in al akhirata, and the afterlife, right? And so the hereafter, afterlife, same meaning, right? The life after this one. Here, darul qarar, and that's quite powerfully put in the Arabic language. That alone is the place of settlement. Good translation, qarar. It's like, it's like when you pour some water, it'll flow downhill and eventually get to a place where it stops. There's no more momentum to take it any further, so it will settle and it stay. So it's like you're saying you're here just temporarily, but where you're meant to go and stop and stay permanently, that's the akhirah. And there's two addresses there. So what happens? How do people get there? Man amila sayyi'atan fala yujza illa mithlaha. And whoever does an evil deed will only be paid back with its equivalent. And this is one of the gifts. And subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when punishing, Allah doesn't punish people beyond what they deserve, right? And if you're rewarded, you get rewarded much more than what you actually deserve. But when the punishment comes, you're punished equivalent to your deeds. And the worst of people, the worst of their deeds, that's what the standard by which they're going to get punished with, right? We've talked before about why people are in hell forever. That's only for kufr, someone that knows what disbelief is, knows its consequences, and says, I still don't care, right? So his intention is to remain a disbeliever forever, right? And because that's his intention, his punishment is also forever. Also, crime, the duration of a crime is not, who says it has to be equivalent to the time, sorry, the duration of the punishment doesn't have to be equivalent to the time of the crime. So someone could go shoot someone, kill them in 5 seconds, right? Does that mean you're going to lock them up when you're punishing them for 5 seconds or 10 or 20? Right? No, because there's the severity of the crime decides that. And like I said, when it comes to these things, on the day of judgment, فَاعْتَرَفُوا بِذَنْبِهِمْ, the people in hell will admit and recognize their own crimes, and they'll recognize they deserve what they get, right? We might not see it in this life, but on the day of judgment, when the full picture and the perspective is made clear, even they will say, they will recognize their crime. right? And and ultimately someone that knows of a punishment is given a warning and he chooses to ignore it, then who's got to blame? Himself. So then, but the punishment is never more severe than actually what the crime is, right? So then, and then he says, woman. So the other address, وَمَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ يُرْزَقُونَ فِيهَا بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. And whoever does righteous deeds, whoever does good, whether male or female, right, is a believer, they will enter paradise where they will be provided for without limit. So whoever does good deeds and is a male or female. So in Islam and in reality, the opportunity to get closer to Allah is equal for males, for men and women, male or female, it doesn't matter. The opportunity is equal. The way you do it is different, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has created ladies with the faculty of, childbearing, right? They give birth to children, for example. So, for example, they get ladies when they're uh, breastfeeding their child or they're playing with the child and looking after. Generally, they get a hit of dopamine. They find pleasure in that, right? And so that road to getting closer to Allah, and it is a means of getting closer to Allah, is facilitated. A lady that raises 5 children, gets the reward of her lifetime of deeds and 5 separate lifetimes of deeds. And if it is good that she passes on through them, then she's getting that reward as well. And the father, men are generally stronger physically, hardier, sturdier, so they go out and they're the providers, right? So there's different roles, right? But the opportunity spiritually to be closer to Allah is equal. And then so he says, and they will فَأُولَٰئِكَ, then those lofty amazing people will enter paradise, enter the garden, right? And like I said, um, in the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah, and bear in mind that the garden here talking about people that live in the desert, right? I really noticed this when I was living in Jordan and Syria. When I came back, for the odd summer trip, just driving around, seeing all this greenery in England in summer, it hit me. It's like, wow, it has this profound impact. So it's something that these people long for, right? So um, they'll be given this, they'll be entering into paradise. What they're going to do there? Yurzaqun, they'll be given their provender and provision, which is a major concern for people. Like obviously in our times, you've got the added, the water bill and the electricity bill and the council tax and all of these things, right? But a major concern for the majority of humanity, its history, that has been, how you can put food on the table. And there it's going to come without even asking, without measure, without reckoning, right? As much as you want. What more can you ask for, right? And if that's there, then all the other worries are taken care of as well. So this is what he says to entice them, right? And then his targhib, and then so what do they do? So he continues, وَيَا قَوْمِ مَا لِي أَدْعُوكُمْ إِلَى النَّجَاةِ وَتَدْعُونَنِي إِلَى النَّارِ. Oh my people, how is it, how is it that I invite you to salvation while you are inviting me to the fire? تدعونني لأكفر بالله وأشرك به ما ليس لي به علم وأنا أدعوكم إلى العزيز الغفار. You invite me to disbelieve in Allah and also associate with Him what I have no knowledge of, while I invite you to the Almighty, most forgiving. Look at this, right? This is where the genuine concern shows. He has care, affection for these people. He wants their guidance, and like I said, this is the way of the prophets. That they want guidance. They want good for people, right? So if you have this empathy and this quality within you, and empathy, this desire for good, nush, excellent, nurture it, right? You should want good for people. So he says, oh my people, right? Mali, like what's up with me? Like it's almost like he's questioning himself, like, am I doing something wrong? What is it, right? Ad'ukum ila najati, I'm calling you, I'm inviting you to rescue. It's like literally he's saying, like imagine, there's people, um, they're on a ship or they're on a boat and it's gonna go down a waterfall, they're gonna get smashed on the rocks below or something, and someone's throwing them a rope, here, grab onto this, and we'll keep you, we'll pull you in, so you don't go over the edge. And what they're doing is, when they grab onto the rope, they're pulling him into the water. No, you come with us. So he says, what's up with me? Like, am I not getting this? I'm calling you to be rescued from what? The inevitable consequences of their choices and actions, right? Disbelief in the prophet, and all the other crimes, the genocide and all these things that they were doing. I'm calling you to rescue, like, you'll be rescued. Whereas وَتَدْعُونَنِي إِلَى النَّارِ, and you're calling me to the hellfire, which shows that he was making his efforts trying to guide them, and they were working on him. Or he's deluded, or we can't let him escape, because if he ends up escaping, if he ends up believing, then we'll have to answer. It will have an effect on our position, our public position. We can't have that. So this is what he does, right? He keeps calling them, and they keep calling him to the opposite direction. He says, oh, wrong slide. He says, تدعونني لأكفر بالله وأشرك به ما ليس لي به علم. This needs a bit of explanation. So you're calling me to disbelieve in Allah, right? Disbelieve in Allah, the one who created me. He sent a prophet with sound argument and miracles to prove what he's saying is correct. You want me to disbelieve in Allah despite all of this? وأشرك به ما ليس لي به علم. And you're calling me to associate something, let's say this thing, with Allah in worship, right? So basically saying, he knows Allah to be the true God, but then to say, oh, Fir'awn as well, right? Or whatever else, they had multiple gods, at some points. Uh, yeah, the Egyptians believed in multiple gods. So although they had a particular place for the ruler, the pharaoh, and he was the god in their eyes, and Fir'aun obviously claimed to be the highest of them, but they had a particular place of worship for them, and then they had belief about other gods. So he says, you're calling me, but here's a statement: لأشرك به وأشرك به ما ليس لي به علم, to and associate with him what I have no knowledge of. So this basically means, this way of expressing in Arabic is, why do you, so let's say, what is this thing he has no knowledge of? Fir'aun and the other gods, right? Of their being divine beings, right? That is what he has no knowledge of. Why does he have no knowledge of this? Is it because he used to skip class? No. The way it's expressed in Arabic, how you understand it is that I have no knowledge of it because it cannot be known. Basically, he's saying, you're telling me to worship something whose godhood cannot even be proven. There's no way of knowing it, so I don't know it. So why would I go and worship it? That's basically what he's saying, right? So you tell me to do this, right? وَأَنَا أَدْعُوكُمْ إِلَى الْعَزِيزِ الْغَفَّارِ. And whilst so you're telling me to worship, disbelieve in Allah, associate partners with him, whilst I am, calling you to the mighty, Al-Aziz, the Almighty, the oft forgiver, is Ghaffar, like we said, he forgives again and again and again, right? And both of these qualities, so mighty, so he can punish you, get vengeance, he can resurrect you, he has the power, he can throw you into hell. Ghaffar, he can forgive you now, he can forgive you on the day of judgment. That forgiveness leads to paradise. There's a lot implied by these two names. What's going on, right? So he's saying, look at what I'm doing and look at what you're doing. I'm here trying to help you, and you're here trying to destroy me, right? So then he says, لا جرم أن ما تدعونني إليه ليس له دعوة في الدنيا ولا في الآخرة. There's no doubt that whatever idols you invite me to worship are not worthy to be invoked either in this world or in the hereafter. وأن مردنا إلى الله, and undoubtedly our return is to Allah. وأن المسرفين هم أصحاب النار, and the transgressors will be the inmates of the fire, right? فستذكرون ما أقول لكم, you will soon remember what I say to you, and I entrust my affairs to Allah. وأفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد, and Allah Surely Allah is all seeing of His servants. What's He saying? لا جرم أن ما تدعونني إليه ليس له دعوة في الدنيا والآخرة. Right. So He's translated as there's no doubt that whatever idols you invite me to are not worthy to be invoked either in this world or the next. So basically, what He's saying here is clearly, without a doubt, with certainty, what you call me to worship, these things have. This is one interpretation. He's done an interpretive translation here, which is fine. But the two main positions that ways you can understand this is these idols that you're calling me to worship, without a doubt and with absolute certainty, they have never called anyone to worship them. So, for example, if someone makes a claim and says, you know what, you have to worship this pen, and there's people, they go around, knocking on doors, there's a particular black big pen that needs to be worshipped, you have to worship this pen. And has the pen ever asked to be worshipped? No. Can the pen ever ask to be worshipped? No, it's a pen, it can't speak, right? In the akhir, has this ever happened in the dunya? No. In the akhirah, has this pen ever, unless obviously it can't speak, it can speak if Allah gives it the power to, right? Has things to speak in the akhirah. But of its own volition, has it ever asked? No. Not in this dunya. Will it ever ask to be worshipped in the akhirah? No. So he's saying, oh, it's a very powerful verse. He's saying that, like, look, it's absolutely clear these things are not asking to be worshipped. Who are you? Why are you telling me to worship this thing? That's one way to interpret it. And another interpretation is that these things can never answer any prayers. So they're calling him to more than just Fir'awn, but the whole religion. That these things can never answer any prayers or any calls. Someone asks them for help, neither in the dunya nor in the akhirah. They can't. Whereas Sayyidina Musa, Allah gave him these tremendous miracles, right? There's clearly a response there. So his translation here, Dr. Mustafa Khattab, is a good translation. He says that whatever idols you invite me to are not worthy to be invoked, clearly, right? And then then he says, well, and also undoubtedly, sorry, it's beyond my control. So he's saying that we're not just going to stay here and sit here, right? That we are returning to Allah. We're going to go back to Allah. Our lives don't just end here. There's this akhirah that I've told you about. Right? We're not going to end up in front of any of these other idols, right? And there's no proof of this. Have these idols ever sent a prophet with miracles? No, right? And then he says, وَأَنَّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ هُمْ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ, and those who go to excesses in wrongdoing, they alone are the people of the hellfire. Maybe these people are trying to threaten him that, if you don't do this, this will happen to you and that will happen to you. He says, no. Those who go to excesses, and what is excess? You've got a clear proof and miracles, that indicate worship Allah, the true God, and you leave that and then you go worship a man who's, at this point, in his old age, right? It's maybe about 70 at this point or whatever. And he's clearly aging, right? He's not in his prime, and so he was young once, now he's old, which means what? He's going to die. And you're worshipping someone like that when you have this being that is perfect, who deserves worship. And then he says, فَسَتَذْكُرُونَ مَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ, you will soon recall what I'm saying to you. Meaning, look, this is really important, take heed. But if you don't, then a day is going to come, not very far off, you look back at what I said to you, and it'll be a source of regret for you, right? And that's one of the that's going to be one of the hardest things as well for the people in the hellfire, that the regret and the remorse that they'll feel at the lost opportunity, right? And what were they're saying, Rabbana akhrijna, they'll say, oh Allah, take us out and send us back, and we'll do other than what we used to do. We'll be completely different. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَوْ رُدُّوا لَعَادُوا, that if they were sent back, they'd be exactly the same, right? It's their own choice. So that is also, like, why people, if they're in hell forever, that's basically it. It's their own choice, right? And they would consistently make those choices. So, and then he says, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ, I entrust my affair, my matter to Allah, the Supreme Being who has all the qualities of perfection. Indeed, Allah is well versed and He sees everything about His servants. The word Basir, Basirun bil Ibad, is used in the context, like in Surah Al Mulk, is used in the context to explain that, or to give the meaning that this person is an expert in something. Zaydun Basirun Bisayarat, for example. Zayd is an expert when it comes to cars. He knows how they work and everything, right? So Allah sees every single thing about His servants, right? So actually, He says, "Ufawwidu amri ila Allah." Tafwid, entrusting your matter to Allah. So in all things, when you start something, you turn to Allah. You ask Allah, recite Surah Al-Fatiha if you want. You ask Allah for help. During it, keep reminding yourself of Allah, asking Allah, and at the end of it, when you've done your part, what you feel, what you yourself can do, Allah, Allah, Allah. That's the way of a believer. It's all entrusted to Allah. When things are beyond your control, so they're plotting against Him, that's why He's saying, I should entrust myself to Allah. When they're plotting against Him and they're trying to harm Him, what does He say? وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. I put my matter, I can't take care of it, so now I've given it to Allah. Allah is taking care of it. So this is where basically you can't, there's nothing practical to do, because look at tawakkul. Tawakkul is what? Tawakkul is you take all the practical steps, but then you look at Allah. You take all the practical steps, like that's the only thing which will make this thing work. Once you've done that, you ignore all of that and you look at Allah, because Allah is the one that actually makes everything work, right? And you look at Allah, that's tawakkul. But here there's no practical steps to take. You can't do anything, so you say, oh Allah, it's in your hands, right? My entire matter, He says, I've entrusted it to Allah. And Allah, so they tried to harm Him. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said? فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكَرُوا. So Allah protected him from the real harmful, the immensely harmful schemes that against him. Makr, um, this secret plan or whatever that they had, to harm him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took care of it, right? So he was saved. We don't know exactly what happened, but what we know is he had tafweed. He put his trust in Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him. Now it could be that sometimes a person is meant to be destroyed and is meant to be killed, or is meant to go through a certain degree of hardship, but that's for their benefit. قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. Say, nothing will afflict us except that which Allah has written in our favor. So it doesn't mean, so you have to look at the perspective. Always have the bigger perspective. Allah wants what is in my ultimate benefit, meaning for this life and the next. And sometimes hardship occurs here, and for ease and a higher rank and better rewards in the akhirah. So always bear that in mind. So, but if you put your trust in Allah, you won't be let down, right? Maybe you have a plan and there's tawakkul and tafweed. The plan might fall short, it might fall through, but in that is good for you, right? It's in your ultimate benefit. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it. So no one's let down, right? And so He says, فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكَرُوا وَحَاقَ بِآلِ فِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ الْعَذَابِ. Right? And the the followers of Fir'aun, has it translated? They are and Pharaoh's people were overwhelmed by an evil punishment. Subhanallah. And the word haqa is like ihata in Arabic. That the followers of Fir'aun were completely surrounded by the worst type of punishment, right? And what does it mean, surrounded? Not literally, but it means that imagine you're an army and there's a few fighters and you're surrounded by an army. If you attack, if you go ahead to attack, they get you from the sides or from behind. You're surrounded. There's nothing you can do, right? It's guaranteed defeat in this situation, right? You might be able to attack one person, two people here, but it's ultimately, you're destroyed. So Pharaoh's people are completely surrounded by this terrible punishment, which is what? النار يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا, by a fire. So this is how it is. They were drowned, these people, and So then they go into their graves and they're punished. So this is one of the ayat that the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah used to indicate, to prove that there's punishment in the grave. And how do we know that this fire is not the fire of hell? Because it says, وَيَوْمَ تَقُومُ السَّاعَةُ, on the day the final moment is established, uh, it said, the angels say, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَدْخِلُوا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ أَشَدَّ الْعَذَابِ, enter the followers of Fir'aun and him, if they're getting the worst punishment, and he's obviously going to be with them, into the worst punishment, the worst torment. So they're getting punished in their graves, so they were drowned straight into fire, as we see in Surah Nuh as well. Those people who أغرقوا فأدخلوا نارا, they were drowned and then entered into fire, right? Although that could also be interpreted as the Day of Judgment, but um, the same meaning for the grave is also possible. But here it's so there was this completely ravaged by this punishment in their graves. And then he says, "An-nar yu'raduna alayha," the fire. What is this terrible punishment? The fire, right? What about it? يُعْرَضُونَ عَلَيْهَا غُدُوًّا وَعَشِيًّا. They will be exposed to it in their graves morning and evening. Well, at least to get some rest in between. No? No. This is something that the Arabs used to use this term, غُدُوًّا وَعَشِيًّا, غَدْوَ وَعَشِي, to express someone who's wealthy. Because they say that, because most people, in history, have not had lavish lifestyles, right? And there's been places where people can't eat 2 meals a day, right? It's just one meal, right? And the Arabs, if someone frequently had morning and evening meal, then this saying this person got wealth, is wealthy, right? The wealthy could do it. So, but it's an expression to show all the time, because if you can eat these times, you can eat other times as well. So it's an expression to say all the time, morning, evening, and everything in between. They're constantly getting roasted in this fire. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from this. And on the Day of Judgment, go into the worst punishment, right? A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. So is it worth it, just on the balance of probabilities and just looking at it from an intellectual perspective? Is it worth it? Is it worth, is the 60, 70, 80, 100,000 years on the dunya, is it worth that punishment? No. So this is why the intelligent person accepts iman. And waliyadu billah, Allah protect us from anything besides. So what are the lessons? So this life is temporary. Remember this and work for the akhirah. So what does it mean it's temporary? You're not going to be here forever, right? And sometimes you lose sight of it. Sometimes people in their youth lose sight of it. Sometimes people in their old age, they lose sight of it. So what you do, you keep sight of it all day, like every day. You have this awareness that and this comes from reciting the Quran, reflecting on the Quran, that I'm not going to be here forever, right? And everything I do today contributes to what my forever will be like. So you bear that in mind, and that's what working for the akhirah is, right? So you worship and you do good. And he says, even so, the next one is, even those who are punished are not wronged, right? There's no dhulm, la dhulm al-yawm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. No matter what you see and what you think, on the Day of Judgment, that will be the day of justice, right? Justice will be established. Even if a righteous person has wronged someone else, a bad person, the person 99% of is done is good, but 1% is bad, and the opposite, someone has, let's say someone's got 100% wrong, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow that injustice to go unanswered, right? That's the Day of Justice. So even these people, وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا, and your loving Lord does not wrong anyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said this, right? And we know it's to be true. So even these people that are punished, there's no injustice, right? It's what they've brought on themselves. And then there is no rational proof for shirk, right? How can there be? When you study basic aqidah, the Burhan al-Tamanu', they say, a basic proof which is watertight, that there can't be more than one supreme God, right? Just to be a God, what is the understanding of a God? A being who is has absolute power and a will which must be enforced. If he decides something, then it must happen. Otherwise, a God. You're just like a member of a club somewhere, right? And you're not a god. And when Allah decides something, it happens, right? So you can't have two of these, right? Let alone 3 or 4 or 5. It's just one, and it's a basic proof of study in Aqidah. So there's no proof for it. And entrust matters to Allah when there's nothing you can do. That's the lesson here. Like if there's nothing you can do, you've tried everything. Oh Allah, it's in your hands. And then you tell yourself, and you make sure that you know that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring about, that's what's going to be good, right? So you remember that. And the last one, Allah's protection is greater than anyone's means of harm. If no matter what they have, they can have all the artillery and all the armies and all the means at their disposal. If you're not meant to get harmed, you won't get harmed. This is Allah's protection. So you seek protection from Allah, right? Ask Allah for protection from the shaitan, from anyone that would affect your deen. People usually, when they're constantly worried about the evil eye, black magic, simple solution: the last 3 surahs 3 times, morning and evening, or Ayatul Kursi after every prayer, and you'll be looked after, right? And only that which is meant to come and hit you will hit you, and that which isn't meant to hit you will never hit you, and you just be comfortable with that. Yeah, and that which is meant to hit you, it might be painful, but there's good in it for you. So Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So Alhamdulillah, great by the grace of Allah. Let us call it a day here. Any questions? None. Right, great. So we'll stop here, and Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The book, I've referred to a few sources and stuff. One of them, which I've been doing by, is Al-Qasas Al-Qur'ani by Dr. Salah Al-Khalidi, a contemporary scholar in Jordan. So anyway, there's 4 like this, and we finished the second one. So 2 more to go, inshallah. And so yeah, Alhamdulillah. Also, we've got an event on Seeker's Guidance coming up in a few days on the Battle of Badr as well. And I've covered that in the Seerah course. If you go into the playlist, I've covered that in a few sessions in detail. So if you have some time, it might be worth to go listen about the Battle of Badr, why it happened, what happened, and what happened after. So excellent. Barakallahu feekum jami'an. And we'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Seeker's Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Visit seekersguidance.org to access reliable Islamic knowledge taught by qualified teachers. We offer a wide range of courses, podcasts, articles, and a world-class answer service. Support us in spreading free, reliable Islamic knowledge to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Visit seekersguidance.org/donate and make a small monthly commitment today. Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever guides someone to goodness will have a similar reward." So don't forget to share this podcast and spread prophetic guidance.